And by my clock, it is 12 o'clock. So we will begin. So good day, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, AI and IA, More Than a Palindrome. Today, we're going to explore the evolving role of AI internal auditing, and specifically in the areas of competency, skepticism, and future use cases. But before we dive in, I'd like to cover a few quick housekeeping items. So we will be launching poll questions throughout the webinar for CPE credit tracking. To receive that credit, you must participate in all three of the poll questions that you see on your screen during the webinar. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. You can use the question feature, which is, I believe, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen to enter your question, and we'll address as many as we can throughout the webinar and at the end. And if we don't get to your question, we'll reach out to you via email afterwards. The presentation slides can also be downloaded from the handout section up upper right-hand corner of your GoToMeeting control panel. This webinar is being recorded, and it will be sent out for an on-demand access after the session. And at the conclusion of the webinar, a short survey will launch, which you will need to complete in order to get professional credit. Those CPE credit certificates will be sent via email within the next 7 business days. So with that aside, thanks for joining us today. We're excited to take you on this journey with us in the next hour. So let's get started. So first of all, my name is Ray Beste, and I'm the Principal AI Strategist here at Sikich. My role at Sikich involves working with internal and external customers around really all things AI. I help focus on helping our internal practice areas get the most out of AI, as well as preparing them to do so for our customers. I also work directly with those customers to help guide them on their AI journey. I will be your presenter today with the assistance of my esteemed colleague, David. David, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ray. My name is David Panicko, and I'm an Internal Audit Consultant at Sikich. I work with clients in a wide array of industries in the internal audit and other risk management capacities. Recently, I've been driving some projects using AI that resulted in time and cost savings for our clients. Overall, the results of these projects have been positively received. With that being said, as we flip to the next slide, Ray will give us a quick run through of the agenda and we'll get started here.
Thanks, David. And before we get to the agenda, this is another reminder that we welcome questions. Please submit them via the question feature in the GoToWebinar control panel. A PDF copy of all the slides, as I said, is available in the handout section of the control panel. And if you do want to get CPE credit, be sure to answer all 3 polling questions and take the brief survey at the end, and certificates will be circulated via email in the next 7 days. And here we have the high-level agenda for today's adventure. The overall objective of our presentation is to introduce everyone to a framework that we believe will help guide you towards a successful deployment of AI, and to do so through the lens of an internal auditor. David and I have chosen to take a slightly different approach to your standard slide-driven webinar. Yes, we'll have slides to frame the discussion for each topic we intend to discuss, but those slides will act mainly as a summary of our primary objective at that point in our journey. The actual content of our presentation will be more of a conversation between us and includes not only the basis of our framework, but also real-world examples or use cases to hopefully spark ideas that can demonstrate the art of the possible. We'll be using the metaphor of orienteering as David guides us through our journey with specific questions, comments, and realizations as I answer those questions and bring light to the technical and practical usage of AI. Now today, David and I represent just 2 of over 30 service areas within Sikich, with David in the governance, risk, and compliance service area, and I in the data and analytics service area. So David, why don't you get us started?
Absolutely. So Ray, can you start by telling us why the concept of AI and IA as a palindrome is significant in the context of internal auditing?
Well, this concept, I think, is a powerful metaphor because it emphasizes the interconnected and complementary roles of AI in internal auditing. Just like a palindrome reads the same backward and forward, AI and IA reflect each other in a symbiotic way. AI enhances the capabilities of internal auditors by automating repetitive tasks, providing deep insights, and improving accuracy, while IA ensures that the AI is implemented ethically, aligns with regulatory standards, and adds true business value.
So would you say that the relationship between AI and IA is more about enhancement rather than replacement?
We're going to talk a lot about that whole, replacement versus enhancement thing today. And you're right. This dual relationship means that AI and IA must evolve together to create a more effective auditing function that not only leverages tech, but also maintains that human oversight and professional judgment. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. And that last part, professional judgment, I believe is the key that we'll discuss more about during this presentation, as AI is not here to replace auditors, but really to empower them to do their jobs better and add more strategic value.
So as we'll be utilizing Sikich's framework for deploying AI, can you start us off by explaining this framework a bit?
Sure, let's get started with a visualization. Imagine you're out in the wilderness, tasked with finding your way to a destination with only a map and a compass. This is what implementing AI can feel like. It's challenging, but achievable with the right preparation. So our Sikich AI framework, which we call orienteering your way through your AI journey, is designed to help navigate this process. It's about understanding the terrain of your business environment, plotting a clear course for adoption, choosing the right tools, and adapting as challenges arise. By focusing on these steps, you can effectively integrate AI, stay aligned with business objectives, and ultimately reach your goals successfully. This framework will be the foundation of our discussion today, providing practical steps for you to guide your AI journey.
Ray, before we go much further, can you explain a bit more about why you compare navigating the AI journey to orienteering? Why does this particular analogy work so well?
Well, as a former Boy Scout leader and having been in the wilderness with a map and a compass and a bunch of scouts trying to figure out how to get to a particular location without the use of their phone, I can attest to the need for proper preparation, having the right tools, and knowing how to use those tools. So I believe that orienteering, which is just navigating between point A and point B with a compass and a map, and implementing AI both require careful planning, adaptability, and the right tools. In orienteering, you need a map, a compass, and a clear understanding of the terrain to navigate through unknown territory. In an AI journey, you need a clear strategy, well-defined objectives, and the appropriate tools to navigate the complexities of AI adoption.
Okay, I think I'm following you here. We need a plan to get to where we want to go, which makes sense. So Ray, one initial question I have for you is, along this AI journey, how can we prepare for the unknowns we will undoubtedly face?
Well, just as a scout leader or orienteer needs to be constantly aware of their surroundings and adjust based on obstacles they run across, businesses must be ready to adapt their approach as they integrate AI technologies into their work. It's about setting a direction, being prepared to adjust your course as needed, and having the skills to interpret the data and insights that AI provides. So we're going to stop here for our first poll question. Yeah, wait for that to pop up on your screen. So the question is, when it comes to AI and audit, what best describes your experience so far? So please click your answer. So it looks like most of you are kind of in that we're exploring AI but haven't started yet, or you maybe experimented a little bit, but it's not fully integrated. Got a few that are already using AI for audit tasks and seeing results, and a few are like, AI, it's new to me. So all over the board there. That's good. So let's move forward here.
As you mentioned earlier, step one in the framework is mapping the terrain. So Ray, can you start by helping us understand the current landscape of AI today? More specifically, I'd like to know about not only the key opportunities with AI, but also the challenges that we should be aware of.
Well, unless you've been in a coma or something for the last 2 years, I think you're aware that AI is the current landscape, at least for it, is excitement, a little anxiety, a lot of unknown territory, and a lot of promise. AI is the potential to really transform business by automating those routine tasks that nobody wants to do, enhancing our data analysis, and hopefully providing deeper insights. There are really an endless number of opportunities. It can analyze entire data sets, determine appropriate sample sizes, and help improve the overall accuracy of things.
Are there any concerns that we should keep in mind?
Nah, it'll be fine. I'm sure everything's just going to be, just plug it in and go. But obviously, that's not true. There are a few worries. I'd like to mention a few right now, and we're going to talk about a lot of them throughout today. The first is that number one thing that when it first came out, people started talking about, that is the fear of job displacement. Many worry that AI is going to replace their job or at least part of their role.
Yeah, I agree. This one's pretty common. I see articles all the time titled something like predicting which jobs are most likely to be replaced by AI. So keeping that in mind, Ray, what do you think about these predictions?
Well, my attitude on it changes daily, to be honest with you, but I think right now, I believe that AI is designed to augment our capabilities, not necessarily replace all of them. I think that's why you see products called Copilot rather than Captain. AI will change the types of jobs available for sure, just as basically every advancement in technology has through history. But that concept of a co-pilot there to assist you rather than replace you, I think, is currently a more accurate way to look at things. By learning to work alongside AI and pivoting towards analyzing results and asking the right questions and allowing AI to do the busy work of collecting data, etc., I believe we'll all feel more fulfilled in what we do and can make and get more things done quicker. Now, another challenge I'd like to mention is ensuring the reliability of these AI-generated insights, since AI models can be prone to bias if not trained on representative data. We need to be aware of these challenges and work to mitigate them while leveraging the opportunities AI offers to enhance quality and efficiency.
Yeah, I really like what you said there about humans being the pilot and AI being the co-pilot. That's really just there to help us out. I think that might resonate well with people, and I know it sure does with me. All right, Ray, next, I'd like to talk about a specific use case or example for a minute. Could you explain how AI can be utilized at a company? Let's say, for instance, at a bank assessing something like high-risk loans. How does AI help identify risks that might have been overlooked by traditional methods?
Well, I think traditionally you'd probably use some sort of sampling method to review a large number of loans, which means there's always a risk of missing some critical red flag. With AI, it is possible to analyze an entire data set of loans, not just a sample, which allows the identification of patterns and anomalies more completely.
So in this scenario with high-risk loans, what specific insights does AI provide to the bank that makes a difference?
Well, I think it's similar to what a human would do. You're going to flag loans that are below prime or maybe they're above a legal lending limit, and you're going to analyze things like borrow history and repayment patterns and other similar type of risk indicators. It's the level of analysis that a human would do, which they don't have time to analyze every single record, and AI can do that more quickly and give a more complete picture of the overall landscape of risk and allows the human to focus efforts on the higher risk areas.
Yeah, I can see how that could actually be pretty helpful. All right, let's keep moving here. At step 2 in our framework, we have setting your course. So Ray, as we talk about this, I suppose this is about goal setting. How can we effectively set goals for AI adoption? And why is it important to align these goals with business objectives?
Well, if you start down the path without a waypoint in mind, maybe you walk off a cliff or take 4 hours to travel what should take 30 minutes. Not that I have any history in that. So maybe let's not do that. Setting goals is crucial to ensuring that the integration of AI adds real value. Just like setting waypoints and orienteering, we need to define specific measurable objectives for whatever project we're working on. These might include improving efficiency in certain processes, possibly enhancing the quality of insights, or maybe reducing the time spent on repetitive tasks.
Yeah, I know you've been working a lot with our auditing practice at Sikich, especially in helping reduce time spent on repetitive tasks. Can you describe other ways AI can assist the auditor's role?
Well, auditors many times manually develop test procedures and specific sample sizes, which can take a lot of time. Today, AI-driven tools can recommend optimized testing steps and automatically calculate the most relevant sample size, or even just analyze all the data, allowing auditors to spend more time on the strategic risk analysis that they normally do. So anytime there's a vast amount of data that's just too much for a human to evaluate, AI can take on the job and provide insights much quicker. I think it's important that AI initiatives are not pursued in isolation, but have a plan at least to contribute to the overall success of the company. So for example, if a business objective is to enhance compliance, AI can be used to automate control testing and ensure continuous monitoring. It's really about breaking down the AI journey into manageable pieces or phases, such as starting with a small pilot, learning from it. Did it work? Did it not work? Did we actually add value? And then scaling successful projects. Doing this helps mitigate risk and ensures that each step actually adds value.
So we can start small, but eventually we want to get to doing bigger AI projects. What can you tell us about managing the budget and resources related to an AI project in particular?
Well, unless your boss has handed you a blank check and unlimited resources, it's probably something we need to manage well. When considering budget and resource allocation, it's important to consider all aspects of your AI project.
So other aspects like what?
Well, you need to, when you're dealing with AI projects, you're usually dealing with some type of licensing or subscription costs. So you got to consider that in the overall ongoing cost, and it can be relatively significant to the overall project. Since we're probably talking about AI models, don't forget model training or fine tuning costs if your project goes beyond using some of the out of the box models. Then there are these things called tokens, and not to get technical here too much, but a token is, you can think about a syllable and a word, kind of about one word is about 1.5 tokens. Well, most models, when you build something custom, you're getting charged for those tokens. So how many you're using for a particular model will help determine the overall cost upfront as well as ongoing. And of course, you've got all the traditional other costs associated with any tech project. I think that the key point here is to start small with a form of proof of concept for your project, get constant feedback, and determine if there are any showstopper walls before you eat up all your budget and you have no outcome. I think that's key to keeping these projects from getting away from you. One thing about AI projects, because it's the shiny new thing, it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole that doesn't match the actual strategic vision of the project. It's cool, but it doesn't actually do anything. So it's critical to keep focus on the objective for each project.
Yeah, I think that's very important to note that, Ray. Next, I'd really like to talk about a practical example of, let's say, how AI could be used in a common everyday business process. Could you give us an example of how AI could be or is already being used in processes such as bank reconciliations or stock report testing? This seems like an area where AI could help a lot. So starting with bank recs, how does AI offer anything different from existing auto matching features common in accounting software?
Well, that's usually the first reaction I get when I talk about bank rec, and people are like, well, I've had that in my ERP software for 10 years. How is this going to add anything different? And I
Right.
think those traditional auto matching features are typically rules based and rely on exact matches or maybe some simple fuzzy matching, where AI can utilize intelligent matching even when the data doesn't match well enough for auto matching to work. AI can also learn from historical data to handle exceptions and more complex matching scenarios, such as partial payments, split transactions, or foreign currency exchange. It can make predictions by analyzing patterns and user behavior over time. And AI can also enhance the overall reporting and insights and add that into the process itself, such as identifying recurring issues, bottlenecks, or where processes could be optimized. All of that means is that it allows the preparer to take on more of a reviewer's role, which significantly reduces the time spent on those other data collection type of tasks. Now, there are tools such as Copilot for Finance, which is by Microsoft, and they're built specifically to assist with this specific process and leads us to our next topic on tool selection.
Okay, so this is what you talked about earlier. Reconciliations are one of those routine tasks that AI can help with. And before we talk about tools, what about how AI could assist with SOC report testing?
Well, SOC report testing is, I know, one of your favorites because that's what we talked about a lot.
Oh
In
yeah, just a little bit.
So, it's all about controls, right? Making sure processes are working as they should, risks are managed, and compliance is solid. AI can, I think, be helpful here. So, first of all, AI is very good at gathering and reconciling data. Instead of an auditor spending hours pulling reports, checking logs, and tracking down evidence, AI can do that quicker. It can sift through financials, match transactions, and flag anything that doesn't look quite right. Then there's risk identification. Traditional methods rely on sampling a lot of times. We've talked about that, but AI can analyze entire data sets where it makes sense, spotting a pattern, anomaly, or a trend that might get missed otherwise. If something doesn't quite add up, say there's an unusual access to logs or there's transactions outside the norm, AI can bring them to the auditor's attention before it becomes a bigger issue. Now, another big one is control testing and documentation. AI can summarize all those past audit reports, draft test procedures, even generate narratives based on that historical data. That means more consistency, less manual work, and fewer headaches when prepping for an audit. And finally, we have, of course, compliance reviews. AI can compare SOC reports against regulatory standards. It does a very good job of take this document and compare it to that document and show me the differences. It can flag missing controls or areas that need attention. It's like having a built-in compliance check that keeps everything aligned with frameworks like NIST. So when we talk about AI and SOC testing, it's not about replacing the auditor. It's about making their work more efficient. AI takes care of the heavy lifting of collecting data, spotting risk, and summarizing findings, so auditors can focus on the analysis and the decision making. Now, if we take that step a step further and look at tools, whether it's Copilot from Microsoft or ChatGPT by OpenAI or AI-driven audit platforms like MindBridge or Caseware, that's where things can get even more interesting.
Now, when I think about orienteering in our journey, so far we've determined the landscape of our journey and our objectives. Now I think it's time to talk equipment selection or tool selection. So Ray, what should we consider as we begin looking at comparing and selecting AI tools?
Well, like any technology, AI has its own specialized set of tools that assist us and varies by the scope of the project. When selecting an AI tool, we need to consider several things to ensure that that tool fits the specific challenge. So one area to look at is data compatibility. An AI tool ideally should be able to integrate with the organization's existing data systems and handle the types of data that's being used. So for example, if you're a Google shop, then maybe Google's Gemini product and their Vertex AI tools, et cetera, that can more natively interact with Google Drive's data, et cetera, makes more sense. Whereas if you're a Microsoft shop, that may be Microsoft's Copilot and their Azure AI Foundry that interacts natively with the Microsoft Graph and Office data, et cetera, probably makes more sense.
Okay, yeah, that definitely makes sense. I'd say beyond data compatibility, what other factors are important?
Well, if you look at kind of what caused us to be here today, that happened 2.5 years ago, and you look at what OpenAI did with ChatGPT, why did that just take off like crazy? And I think a big part of it was the simplicity of the UI, making that accessible to basically everyone that really contributed to its success. So on a similar note, I believe that the ease of use is important. We're not all data scientists, so the tool should have a user-friendly interface that allows us to use it effectively without needing extensive technical knowledge. Now, another consideration is scalability. If a pilot project is successful, that's good. It would be really helpful if we could also take that solution and scale it without having to change all the tools that we use to build it. It's also crucial to evaluate the specific problem that AI is solving. So for example, if the challenge is around data analysis, a tool that's strong with machine learning capabilities would probably be ideal. Ultimately, the right tool should address the unique needs of the team while being adaptable enough to grow with the organization's AI maturity.
AI can feel pretty dense with all the technical jargon, especially with the rise of generative AI. We keep hearing about large and small language models and all the functionality and token costs that come with those. How does all that factor into selecting the right AI tool or platform?
Well, that is a good question because there are literally thousands and thousands of models available across different platforms, each with its own unique functionalities and price points. Now, when you look at large language model chatbots like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude or Meta and all those others, there's a lot of variety, and choosing the right one kind of depends on your specific task. I like to think of it like the Rolling Stones said, you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. The goal is to focus on the features that generally add value, not on extras you don't really need. So for instance, there's no reason to pay for tokens on a multimodal model, which is a model that can do voice and other sound and video and text, when all you really need is something that to summarize text. So like the Liberty Mutual ad, only pay for what you need. So it's all about balance. Trial and error, benchmarking, and a little experience can help make sure you're getting the right features without overpaying. Over time, a strategic approach will guide you to the most efficient model for the job or models. Keeping in mind, you don't need to select just a single model, and many projects will have multiple models depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So as you know, David, I spend a good deal of my time evaluating new software features for our internal use and for customers. These vendors are adding AI functionality as quickly as they can. And as of this presentation date, a lot of these enhancements that they're claiming are quote unquote coming soon. And the base functionality you will experience isn't really much different than just using ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini or any of these other tools. So it's going to change in the coming months and years, I'm sure, but it's important to evaluate what you're actually getting today versus these promised features that, yeah, that's the next version, while we're in this new era of let's add AI to everything.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, Ray, you and I are both at Sikich. I know that early on, Sikich tackled a few AI use cases. We were working to determine best practices around which technology to utilize and to prove out some basic uses of generative AI. I know you led those efforts. Could you tell the group more about them?
Well, I would just love to. So here, early on, we felt that we needed to see if this whole generative AI thing was just a fad or could you really do anything that it claimed? So we took on one of the most quoted use cases and decided to build an HR agent we call the Sikich HR Navigator. And we did that around our 450 or so documents that already existed, already been curated on our SharePoint environment. The stated goal was to determine if we could build an agent that could properly summarize this collection of knowledge in a meaningful way.
So we were able to get the Sikich HR Navigator agent up and running. And Ray, were there any unforeseen side bonus benefits of executing this project?
Well, my initial hope was that beyond helping our HR team by providing a 24/7 way to answer common questions so they could focus on more complex issues, that it would spark interest in what else could be done using a similar technique. And I'm happy to say that that's exactly what happened. Members of our tech service areas realized that maybe those training manuals, best practice documents, implementation guides, all that together could be used to train an agent so that it was easier to access that information. And our tax and advisory practice areas realized that all that regulation and best practice documentation could be used in the same way. We now have many across the firm evaluating our vast collection of knowledge to determine where else this approach makes sense. And to answer a question from one of our pre-webinar questions was about hardware. We don't really talk too much about hardware costs here, but I just wanted to answer that since we're talking about tools. For most companies, what we're seeing is that purchasing some type of cloud solution, and if it needs to be, if you're a bank or some other highly regulated environment where it has to be completely private, doing that in a private and getting a private instance of that is probably the best compromise between that and buying your own hardware that's very expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you have the problem of obsolescence. You buy that hardware, it's great, but with the speed of change, by the time that hardware is technically not functioning, it's already years behind in technology, and you're just kind of throwing money after another. Whereas when you're in the cloud, of course, you get that kept up to date. That's their responsibility, and you kind of get the best of both worlds. So that was just to answer one of those questions. And that brings us to our second polling question. So I'll wait for that to pop up here. So that question is, what AI tools are you currently using for audit tasks? So it looks like of the ones we selected, there's just a handful that have used those, and most are using either something else or not using anything as of yet. So we will move on to our next topic.
Okay, we are moving right along here. So we have set our objectives, we have a good idea of our goals and where they fit in the current world of AI. And we got some tools. Let's say our backpack for orienteering is full of gear. Now we need to determine how best to learn to use this gear. So Ray, let's jump back to what you mentioned about Microsoft Copilot. Can you share how tools like Copilot have helped companies and individuals? And what kind of training do people need to make sure they get the most out of this AI?
Well, if we look at just one simple yet very valuable function, AI tools like Microsoft 365 Copilot in Teams has been incredibly helpful by turning all those meetings we all have into an interactive experience and providing not only the ability to summarize and ask questions during the meeting, but also turns those transcripts into knowledge that can be used after the meeting to ask questions and get meaningful summaries. And that's not just Microsoft Copilot in Teams, it's Zoom, it's all the other products like that, GoToMeeting, et cetera, have AI tools that allow you to do similar type of functionality. So this not only frees up our time during the meeting to focus on what's being said instead of having to take notes, but also allows us to focus on analyzing outcomes and planning next steps after the meeting. And to put it simply, it just makes us better consultants and project managers so things don't fall through the cracks. Now, a related example might involve the creation of walkthroughs. The creation of those detailed process narratives can be streamlined using these natural language processing tools, such as Copilot or ChatGPT, and those features being added to many of the tools we use each day. These tools can transcribe and summarize interviews, making documentation much less of a burden.
ChatGPT and Copilot-like tools can certainly relieve some of those time-consuming tasks. So what does training look like for effectively using AI?
Well, that's a good question, actually, because you would think it's simple UI, it's simple to do. And you really, to get the most out of AI, I think we need training that goes beyond just how to push the button, especially since there's only one button. We need to understand the capabilities and probably more importantly, the limitations of AI. Learn how to interpret the insights it generates and be able to apply those insights effectively in our daily workflow. Investing in educational programs, attending workshops like we're all doing today, and collaborating with AI experts are all important ways to ensure that we have the skills needed to harness the full potential of this technology. I really believe that becoming an AI organization is a large cultural shift for most companies, and adopting a culture of continuous learning and improvement, if it's not already part of your culture, is a key to becoming an AI first organization.
So it sounds like keeping AI top of mind is important. I'm thinking about some of the things we do here at Sikich, such as our ongoing Copilot office hours and regular AI update trainings.
Well, this, like no other technology, is not the type of thing that you just take one class and you're done. You've got to keep on it for sure.
Okay, let's keep navigating here. Along our journey, there will undoubtedly be obstacles that we will face and need to navigate. What are some of the challenges that we might face when implementing AI, and how can we overcome them?
Well, two related challenges that I think we probably heard before, and it's not really too specific to a specific industry, are data quality and data quantity. So you'll hear this a million times if you go to and listen to AI things. AI is only as good as the data it uses. So if data is incomplete, or it's inconsistent, or it's biased in one way or another, it can lead to the obvious things of unreliable and untrustworthy results. So to overcome that, we need to ensure our data quality is high by implementing strong data governance practices.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's always what you hear. AI is only as good as the data it uses. I think that the data quality piece is well known to most of us, especially on the internal audit side. You know, the duplicate account in your CRM system or that missing phone number. But besides that, how does the quantity, I'm talking about the actual volume or amount of data we have, how does that play a role in all of this?
Well, in order to get these AI models to know anything, quote unquote, you need to train the models on as much data that's practical to teach that model about the variations in whatever it is you're training it about. So whether you're training a large language model that takes literally millions of inputs to train or a machine learning model to predict something, the number and valid variances of transactions will have a direct correlation to the accuracy of that model.
And getting to something we haven't talked about yet, what about the human aspect? How do you address people's resistance to change?
Well, David, we're a member of a technology and accounting firm. So we know a little bit about resistance to change. So it's really a big challenge in all kinds of companies. You know, many users and companies are skeptical about using AI or they're afraid that it will replace their job. So in order to overcome this, I believe it requires clear communication about how AI is being used to augment, not replace their role, and by providing ongoing training to help them feel comfortable with the new technology. Now, ethical concerns are also an issue, especially around the potential for bias in AI algorithms. And to address that, companies need to be involved in the AI development process to ensure transparency and fairness. And they must apply their professional judgment to validate AI generated findings. I'll state that last part again. Apply professional judgment to validate. I really think this is a key part of AI adoption and understanding. It's our professional experiences and knowledge that are critical in this new AI world, and it's a key component to the successful adoption and use of AI.
Ray, I think what you said there is really important as far as humans validating and using their own judgment. So, looking at another example, something practical, considering AI's role in fraud detection, how does AI help identify fraud more comprehensively compared to traditional human led efforts?
Well, let's talk about transactional fraud first. So AI can play a large role in detection by enabling us to analyze every transaction, something that would be nearly impossible for humans to do completely, just due to the fact that there's only so many hours in a day. AI can quickly sift through large volumes of data, identify unusual patterns, and flag anomalies that could indicate fraudulent activities.
Okay, AI is flagging these things. And how do humans fit into this process once AI flags potential issues?
Well, once you have an issue that's been identified by AI, it's up to us, the humans, to bring our overall professional skepticism, context, and the ability to make informed decisions based on that output, and then ensure that potential fraud cases are thoroughly investigated and properly handled. While AI enhances the scope and accuracy of fraud detection, it's our human judgment that I think is essential for interpreting these findings and determining the appropriate course of action.
Ray, a moment ago you said when considering transactional fraud. What other types of fraud can AI help detect?
Well, if you consider the challenge of determining if someone is attempting something fraudulent in, let's say, an insurance situation, or possibly even a legal dispute between people or companies, assuming that deposition or depositions are given, and so you now have a transcript of what has been claimed, what if you could take the transcript or transcripts and compare them against each other or even within one to determine if there are discrepancies? This could surface potential issues more quickly to help guide either the legal team or others that could benefit from that knowledge. Large language models have this capability and it would be a very interesting use case for these purposes.
I mentioned humans just a moment ago, but I'd like to talk about it some more. So, Ray, what about the humans? At this point, we've traveled a good distance into our AI framework, so let's talk more. How important is human oversight when using AI, and the role we, the humans, play in validating AI-generated content and findings?
Well, I really have a strong belief that human oversight is a critical part to this whole process. AI can provide great insights but it's still a tool that needs to be guided by human expertise. I think we need to maintain control of the process, use AI to enhance our capabilities rather than replace our professional judgment.
Can you give an example of how we validate AI findings?
Well, if you take AI that flags a potential control issue, it's up to us to investigate further, consider the overall context, since we may have not given the full picture to AI, and determine the appropriate course of action. Human judgment is essential for interpreting the output of AI, identifying those biases, and making decisions that align with the overall business objectives and ethical standards of your company. Of course, these biases probably came from humans, since that's where the data tends to come from, but I'm just highlighting the need to recognize that and attempt to balance your training data to avoid that bias.
All right. Something else. Lately, I've been hearing a lot about agentic AI or AI agents. How does this advancement in AI relate to the concepts around humans in the loop?
Well, you're right. This 2025 is turning out to be the year of AI agents and the uh, beginning of agentic AI, and we probably could do a whole webinar just like on that topic. But
Yeah.
just at a high level, instead of the typical flow of a prompt by a human followed by a response, and then a human either prompts again or moves on, you have systems being built that will take a prompt or some other trigger and then execute a potentially very complex series of actions that may or may not have any visibility to a human during that processing. A key component of deploying these agents will be careful examination of each step to build trust and assurance that the tasks being performed are appropriate and safe and traceable. So yes, a human in the loop is a key part of this new advancement, as is explainability, and of course, we're all talking about auditing, so the ability to audit results. And to answer another one of our pre-webinar questions around AI and intellectual property rights and its overall relation to risk, I think if you look at that, there are several areas to consider. And the first one would be training data ownership. You need to ensure that the data used to train AI is actually authorized. And this is one that didn't really jump out at me at first, but output ownership. I don't know if it's clear to everybody that the output that AI generates isn't automatically copyrighted, even though you push the button. If you don't edit it and make it yours, then it's not copyrightable right now. So that's going to cause issues. Audit risk. If you're using those outputs across multiple clients, you need to make sure the outputs are reviewed and verified to avoid IP infringement. And then you have provenance. You always need to track the sources of AI to generated content to make sure that you maintain defensibility of where it came from. So that was, again, just to answer one of the other questions that we got pre-webinar. And let's move on.
These AI agents are probably a good segue to the topic of risk in AI deployments and usage. Ray, what can you tell us about different types of risk around AI?
Well, beyond the Terminator taking over the world type of risks, which there's a lot of those feelings out there as well, a few categories to consider are regulatory, intellectual property, which we just kind of touched on a little bit, and personal information risks. So whether your business is in a highly regulated industry or not, keeping up with those current regulations, such as the EU AI Act and various state laws, which are more of those every day, can be difficult but critical to your business's operations. The areas of IP and personal information risks are also at the forefront of companies' thoughts, with stories of leaked intellectual property via public chatbots or the potential leak of personal information. I think a key first step would be to understand the acceptable use clauses of any model or platform used in an AI project. Many of these platforms allow for the opting out of using your data to train their models, which I think should be the default for any that you would use for any project. Now, beyond that, it then comes down to defining acceptable risk versus potential reward when using any tool or platform for AI.
How do we balance risk versus reward for AI specifically?
Well, David, you're probably not going to like this answer, but like a lot of business decisions, that balance of risks versus reward is going to be unique to each business and the goals and objectives of that company. Like most risk, beyond the ethical nature of things, it many times boils down to what value are we gaining by utilizing AI and what harm could occur, and then deciding if the value outweighs the potential harm and what is the likelihood of that harm.
So I understand we've got some risk here. What can we do to help mitigate these risks, issues, and harm?
Well, I think there's a couple of things we can try. So first, you probably want to select more enterprise grade versions of some of these tools. Differing levels of security and control become available when you do that. So for instance, if you choose Microsoft 365 Copilot, it uses the same models as ChatGPT or OpenAI with their ChatGPT, but with the important difference. Instead of using a public instance of those models, Microsoft runs their Copilot in your tenant. Now, as far as OpenAI is concerned, their enterprise edition of ChatGPT incorporates a default opt-out of training, which you can also do with their lower versions by just checking the box, as well as, and they also have a higher level of compliance with standards such as SOC 2 Type 2. So they have passed tests related to data security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy over time, which is the Type 2 part, versus a single time, which is the Type 1 type. So next, we could also look at controlling access to AI. Now, I'm not talking about completely banning the use of AI. That's probably not a good idea. People will work to get past these bans if no alternatives are provided. But by setting standards and acceptable use policy in your company about how to use AI effectively and responsibly, and training people how to use it effectively and responsibly, as well as which forms of AI are accepted, you can then control access to only those tools. Now, another option where it makes sense is to anonymize the data used to train or fine-tune your models. This allows you to still use key elements of that data, but protects the company or person associated with those details.
Ray, you said anonymized data or anonymizing data. Do you simply mean removing personal data elements such as social security numbers, names, birth dates, etc. from the data so that the other details can still be used without anyone being able to tie anything back to a specific person or entity?
That's exactly what I mean. And one final comment here, there is a need to continuously monitor all of this. Changes in regulations, advancements in AI, and inclusion of AI in the software you use, which I think is the one that will catch a lot of companies off guard if they're not diligent. All of that is required to stay in step with AI in your company.
All right, Ray, we're getting towards the end of our journey, and I think now's a good time to figure out a way to track where we're at. How can we monitor the effectiveness of AI tools? And what metrics or KPIs should we be looking at to ensure AI is actually delivering the expected benefits?
Well, we can track benefits such as the time saved on a routine task or series of tasks, or maybe the accuracy of the findings that are generated by AI, or the number of anomalies detected compared to previous methods. So beyond specific metrics, sometimes it's as simple as getting user feedback to determine if the value is being received or not and whether adjustments need to be made. And if it's available for your industry, another way to measure progress is by benchmarking your progress with AI to industry standards of others doing the same thing.
Those metrics make sense. In addition to that, are there specific KPIs that we should focus on?
Well, KPIs could include things like a reduction in manual hours spent on data analysis. So maybe it took 3 days for that monthly board meeting analysis, and now it takes 3 hours. Or it could be things like the percentage of transactions analyzed. We used to analyze 25% of transactions, and now we can analyze all of them. Or maybe the success rate of AI of identifying an issue or fraud. We used to identify about 5%, and now we identify 25%. So you got to regularly review these KPIs, and that helps determine if the tools are meeting their goals, and it helps provide insight into areas where adjustments may be needed. So for instance, if AI isn't catching as many anomalies as expected, it might indicate a need for retraining the model or adjusting the data inputs. So the key here is continuous monitoring and adjustment are important to ensure that AI tools remain effective and aligned to your company's goals. And here I'm going to answer one more question that came pre-webinar about measuring in your own company's AI maturity. And just at a high level, there are all kinds of models out there about how to do this, but you just kind of break it into these 5 categories: strategy, data readiness, technology, people and skills, and governance. Give yourself a rating from early to emerging to scaling to leading, and that kind of gives you an idea of where you sit in your overall AI maturity.
As we approach the destination on our orienteering framework journey, I'm going to ask if you can share one last case study or example where AI integration has improved outcomes. What specific benefits have been realized?
Well, I'll give you one here that's less about generative AI. It's kind of a combination of things. So one I can think of is digitization of insurance policies. So given the volume and complexity of, if you think about insurance policies, how big they are, it can be quite a challenge. So what we did is we took the language, Python, and we built scripts to contextualize the overall policy content. And then we created and fine-tuned a language model. Once we established a structured grid for these policies and integrated all the different variables, we were able to automate the generation of about 90% of the content. So by streamlining the overall creation of the document and managing that through AI, we were able to achieve huge time savings. We reduced a lot of manual effort and improved the overall accuracy of the policies that were generated. Cases like this highlight how AI can transform a process that's very document heavy, enabling efficiency and scalability that would be challenging to achieve with just human manual effort.
I know I've said we're reaching our destination in regard to today's content, but Ray, why is it important to view AI implementation as an ongoing journey, and how can we prepare for future opportunities in AI?
I hope everyone picked up on that today. AI implementation isn't just a one-time project. This tech is changing so fast, and to get the most out of AI, we need to be prepared to adapt and constantly be learning. You need to celebrate a milestone. So if you have a successful project of a pilot or by achieving some improved outcome, you need to make sure that you celebrate that, because I think it's really important that you do that so that it helps build trust and momentum and demonstrates actual value out of AI, especially with those that control the budgets.
Yeah, at the start of our discussion, you called the AI landscape something of rapid evolution. So what can and what should teams do to try to stay ahead as AI continues to evolve?
Well, we all need to stay informed about whatever the latest developments are. Invest in ongoing training, remain open to experimenting with new tools. And I think that's important, the experimentation and trying things to see what value you get out of it. By viewing AI as this journey, we can make sure that we're always at the forefront of these advancements and are continuously finding new ways to add value to our companies. And here we have our final poll question. Wait for that to pop up. And our question is, how do you perceive the future impact of AI on your audit process? Well, that's very enlightening and interesting that 92% believe that it's moderate to high impact on things. So that's very good to hear.
So Ray, what are the next steps for those who are interested in further exploring implementing AI in their organization? How can Sikich help those people act on what they've learned here today?
Well, I think if you're interested in exploring AI further, I would recommend starting by identifying a specific area of your business where you think AI could add value. And that means talking to the people actually doing the work. That's a key part of this. It's not a technology solution that your tech department goes and just builds something. You need to actually find out what are those menial tasks and those repetitive tasks people are doing. And that could be, again, repetitive tasks, or it could be improving data analysis, or something else that's taking too long, or doesn't provide enough insights, or possibly it's making it easier to find and summarize that corporate knowledge that we all have. Sikich and our different service areas offer workshops and resources that can help you get started. including this AI success framework we've started and touched on today, and it helps provide a structured approach to implementing AI.
That sounds great, Ray. And how can participants make the most of these resources you've just mentioned?
Well, we've recently announced a service called the Sikich AI Solution Studio, which can help with pilot projects, training, tool selection, or even a complete roadmap to help your org become an AI-first organization. And that helps you take those next steps on your AI journey. The key is to start small, learn and build from there, as I believe AI has the potential to transform every company, and we're here to help realize that potential.
Finally, as we wrap up here, Ray, what are the key takeaways you want our audience to remember about implementing AI?
Well, first, AI is here to empower us, to enhance our human capabilities, and allow us to focus on the areas where we can add the most value. I think second, human oversight, professional judgment, and ethical considerations are irreplaceable, and AI is a tool that helps us do our jobs better, not one that replaces us. And finally, to quote the CEO of Microsoft, trust is earned, not given. Let's carry that principle forward as we work with AI, ensuring it serves our goals and strengthens trust in everything we do. David, I want to thank you for being today's moderator. Hopefully everyone learned a bit more about how to start down their AI journey. And now, if there are any questions, I will take those. And I'm not seeing anything popping into my chat here, so I will go through the handful of questions we got pre-webinar. And hope we got one here, so let's see what we got in the chat. No questions so far. So let's see, we talked about the tools. Let's see, another one. Maturity, intellectual property, cost of servers. Quick wins for internal audit. So what are easy quick wins for AI adoption in IA shops? I think we talked a lot about them today, but things like auto tagging documents by risk area or summarizing meetings or interview notes, I think that's probably the lowest hanging fruit. We all have meetings, we all want to have all kinds of notes, and using it to summarize and do that. Flagging anomalies in financial transactions, and then drafting reports and executive summaries. Those kind of things are most common. Similar to that, when you talk about using AI in SOX, you've got access control testing, journal entry review, evidence collection. Those are common type of things. If we're going to leverage AI to identify engagements to QA, AI can help QA selection. I think doing things like scoring engagements based on complexity and risk, clustering audits with recurring findings, and again, documentation. And if we were going to look at a 3-year kind of strategy in your AI or internal audit world, year 1 might be running small pilots on specific tasks and training people on AI and responsible use. Then maybe year 2, you're scaling, you're integrating AI into the full audit lifecycle, developing your policies and best practices. And then maybe after that, you're implementing more real-time continuous audit practices and using AI to predict emerging risks and strategic insights. And then our final question has to do with the EU Act and what effect that might have on evaluating compliance and controls around development and adoption. So I think we mentioned one, I believe, earlier in the NIST, you've got that, you've got ISO 42001, you've got the OECD, those are all different frameworks. So I think using them and aligning, those different frameworks align with what the EU was attempting to do with their new act. And I think you can use those as you can use like NIST to adopt a systematic map of uses and risks. You could use you can establish an AI management system based on that ISO 42001. You could use the OECD to align your overall principles and best practices, and then you can use those other frameworks to to create checklists and readiness tools around that particular model. Now that's specific to the EU, but the United States, not surprisingly, I guess, is more state-driven, which makes it even that much more complicated, because if you do business across 10 states, you could have 10 different rules. And my personal opinion is to go more towards something that is beyond maybe where it is today, so that you're more prepared, as opposed to trying to find the minimal to get by, because the rules are changing very, very fast, and as technology and it gets enhanced, you're just going to see it get more and more tightened to protect people.
Yeah, Ray, it looks like we've got a couple of questions in the chat, but I know we're at time here. So I'm not sure if we think we should just send that out to the participants afterwards, or if you want to jump on this real quick.
Yeah, we are at time. So what we will do is we will send out the written answer to the 10 questions we got before the webinar, and a few questions we've got here. We'll write those up as well and send them out as an email with all the answers. I want to keep everybody from their day, since we are now at time. So thank you again, everybody, for attending. Hopefully you're able to get a push in the right direction on your AI journey, and look for the CPE in about 7 days and answer to this around the same time. Thank you and have a great day.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, everyone, for attending.